Precyber by T.C. Ricks and Ken Leitner. Chapter 48. 15 competing airplanes raced around the sky, vying for the first place in the annual Aquanoir air races. The colorful planes maneuvered through a technically challenging course of helium rings floating above the fairgrounds. Should a plane strike a ring, it normally escaped unharmed as the thin surface of the ring burst, releasing its helium, and fell harmlessly to the ground. The rings posed little threat to the planes. However, 15 planes flying so close to each other posed a considerable threat to themselves. The crowds cared little for who won. They came to see the crashes. Small turbine engines powered the planes through most of the flight. In addition, each plane carried a short-duration rocket motor to accelerate through the straight sections of the course. The combination of jet and rocket fuel made any crash spectacular. It took long practice and intense concentration, but Ezekiel loved the marriage of technology and raw human coordination. Ezekiel came to a section of particularly tight turns and focused all thought on the plane. He banked the airplane 90 degrees and pulled hard on the elevator to make sure that the shaft turn into ring 5. Immediately through the ring, he would have to let off the elevator. The maneuver was tricky, but Ezekiel had practiced it for years. Unfortunately, he had not practiced it with another plane flying so close. Most pilots, including the one flying parallel to Ezekiel at the moment, roll left for the first turn, and then back for the next. By alternating the roll direction, the plane at least passed through the upright position briefly. Ezekiel, however, figured it mattered little which direction you rolled in this case, so he always continued the roll left before the second turn. The plane would go upside down briefly, but the roll happened too fast for that to have much of impact on his speed. The crowd loved his little bit of flair. As the airplane went upside down, Ezekiel tapped into a little down-up elevator. Unfortunately, he tapped a little bit too early, and the plane slid to the right and a little as it rolled. In practice, this had only helped him line up for his next turn. However, today at the race, the maneuver took the pilot next to him completely off guard. The crowds cheered as the two planes collided and burst into flames. Fiberglass airframe parts went careening to the stands. A 6-foot wing half made it all the way to the safety fence before tumbling harmlessly off. The expensive parts of the plane, including the miniature turbine engine, the high-torque servos, the remote camera, and the radio, stayed with the main body of the aircraft and fell to the ground in a fireball. Ezekiel's display winked out after the impact. He pulled his VR helmet off and slid his chair back from the controls. The miniature unmanned aircraft cost a small fortune, but missing out on the race troubled Ezekiel more than the loss.
Show me the fucking display. Whose plane was that? Whose fucking plane was that?
No one said anything. The Aquanoir suite had plenty of television screens tuned to the live broadcast of the race, and everyone showed the mistake Ezekiel had made in slow motion.
Fuckity Dan Flatterty and his fucking Irish electronics plane.
One of the suits in the back of the room finally spoke up. Sir, the ratings will hit the roof. That was brilliant. Ezekiel stared at the man. You did it on purpose, didn't you? Ezekiel stormed out. Dude, you're so fired, whispered another one of the suits. Ezekiel climbed in his car and headed back to the office. He turned on some music loudly when his phone rang with an unlisted number. Ezekiel would have ignored the call. Today, however, he felt like yelling at someone, and who better than some punk telemarketer. Ezekiel answered,
Hello? Who the fuck are you?
Mike hired us. He told us to call this number if anything happened. He said no names. Ezekiel stumbled mentally on the unexpected answer. Mike hired you?
What happened to Mike?
Mike's dead.
Dead?
Yeah, gringo. Dead.
Right. Mike's not just someone I ever thought would get killed.
I said he's dead.
Okay. We'll have to meet up in person for this. I have a farm south of the city where we can make final arrangements. Where are you now?
We're in Savannah, getting off a ship. We need a car or a bus ticket or something.
Did anyone see you on the ship?
We smuggled in with a guy named Clark. He didn't give his last name.
What? Did you say Clark?
Ezekiel thought it was likely a coincidence, but better safe on this one anyway. Yes, gringo, Clark. Why? Did you want us to kill him? He seems harmless enough.
Yes! Kill him!
On the word harmless, Ezekiel doubted it was a coincidence. Well, it's probably too late now. He left already. But if we see him again, how much extra money can we make? Ezekiel cursed again. Undoubtedly, it was the same Clark. He probably killed Mike and then just happened to end up riding back with the Patsies. Ezekiel told the end-name Patsy how to reach the farm and then called his secretary to arrange for a bus ticket. He planned to stop by the office and then head down to the farm by helicopter. Ezekiel was having a bad day and was in a very foul mood. Clark must die, and Ezekiel needed a concrete plan of action. He needed to do something that would give him a firm grasp of the situation, and that meant he had to call Laban. Back at the office, he had his new assistant place a call to Laban. Once she informed him that the line was clear, he smiled and spoke to the room. Laban's scruffy fat face filled the augmented reality before him. Beady red little eyes flickered through the obvious inferior connection. Sometimes Ezekiel wondered at the wisdom of spending so much for an interface when the infrastructure that made it possible was so poor. But Ezekiel dismissed such notions. While he might be somewhat of a minimalist of a man of his power, he could accept nothing less than the finest possible tools or accommodations for something he truly cared about. This room was his office, the nerve center of his power, so it did not matter if no more than 100 other people in the room could connect to him with it at full capacity. That capacity was there, and it was his. Laban looked nervous, as well he should. The little man licked his lips and looked back and forth at some unseen threat from beyond Ezekiel's perception. Hello, Mr. Norn. It's an honor to talk to you. The honor is all mine, Ezekiel beamed harmlessly. Talking to such people was something he specialized in. Really? Oh, absolutely. I wondered if we might have a little chat. Laban stood up straighter, quite happy. Of course. Actually, I might have a moment of your time. I might know a nice deal on some seafood that you would find quite lucrative. Ezekiel could not believe his ears. He owned several thousand shipping boats. He owned the trucks that took the shrimp to the processing plant. He owned the processing plants. Indeed, in many cases, he owned the mines that produced the chemicals that enhanced and preserved the seafood for the market. For richer markets, he owned the cleaning companies that removed the mercury and other toxic chemicals. He owned the supermarkets and restaurants that served them. He owned the marketing companies that devised the messages that encouraged people to buy them. He owned the news media that broadcast advertisements. He owned the wires and airwaves that broadcast those messages. He owned the companies that made the equipment upon which people viewed those messages. And Laban Madoni considered him a peer. Ezekiel smiled warmly, as if it were no big thing. Of course, Laban. But first I have a proposal of my own. The main reason I called you. Laban looked eager and took a deep breath. He was subconsciously puffed up a little, nor did not bat an eyelash. I want you to crack a revolution cell. Laban visibly defeated. I know you know Clark. I'm going to put some information out on the net that will bring Clark to you. I want you to go with him. We'll implant a locator, and my corporate police will follow you in. What does it matter? I mean, I understand Clark's important to you, but it seems a little weird to me. Now he cared? Then Norn quickly understood. Before it had simply been a matter of meeting someone famous and maybe an unlikely business opportunity. Now Norn was asking Laban to risk his own personal safety. You know the new revolutionary hero, the one everyone's following on the net? Yeah? That's Clark. Laban was shocked. But how? Ezekiel shrugged as if it were no big thing. Inwardly he seethed with rage, one thing at a time. That's not something you need to know about. What matters is that I want Clark dead. He's done damage to one of my companies. Laban looked shocked a second time. Ezekiel patiently answered, Yes, the game company was mine, and now I mean to deal with the threat. However, Clark's loss is your gain. Laban scratched his head. What do you mean? Ezekiel took a deep breath. He repeated his original instructions. I know you know Clark. I'm going to put some information out on the net that will bring Clark to you. I want you to go with him. We'll implant a locator, and my corporate police will follow you in. Laban thought about it and then nodded. Okay, that makes sense, I suppose. Done. Laban smiled. Excellent. I'll forward you my account information. Ezekiel nodded. Now about that shrimp deal.